Welcome to the show. We've got a lot to talk about today. It's Tuesday, and we're going to talk some UVA basketball. Lots of news, lots of turmoil. I mean, you can say turmoil. It's across the college basketball landscape. So I'm not sure if we have to worry about that so much, just in particular to Virginia. Lots of schools having guys enter the transfer portal in Virginia. Certainly there with two new names being added on Monday, Kadin Shedrick and Isaac Traudt. And I guess as I'm recording this, I'd better look real quick and make sure there are no more names being added here on Tuesday, because the way this has been going, hey, it's been a mile a minute as far as that goes. Let's see, a couple Auburn kids, an Illinois kid, nobody's names that I recognize already. An Old Dominion kid going to Virginia Tech, Mekhi Long. We can talk about that. Let's see. Yeah, no UVA kids added today. So, hey, good news. It's 1:34 as I'm recording this, and there's no more news. So let's go into the deletions and then what it means for Virginia as far as that goes. Tony Bennett put Kadin Shedrick in minutes purgatory back in January, and so the news that Shedrick is entering the portal is not surprising at all. He's got 2 years of eligibility left, because he's a redshirt junior. He had one more year left normally, and then, of course, the COVID redshirt year. So we'll see if he uses both. The 6'11 redshirt junior put his name in a portal on Monday. He joined two other Virginia bigs, Isaac Traudt, who also went yesterday, and then Francisco Caffaro, who went in the portal last week. Caffaro had already indicated before the season was over that he was thinking that he was not coming back. It was just a matter of what his next step would be. He's in the portal just, I guess, to give himself another option in case something doesn't work out professionally for him overseas. So what this does for Virginia is it leaves UVA with just one player currently with any appreciable amount of experience in the front court. That's 6'8" freshman Ryan Dunn. Probably, honestly, better as a big guard, but he played forward this year for Virginia, and he only averaged 12.9 minutes a game. But we got to see a lot of what he could do for Virginia, and so that should be something that'll. He'll be a guy that Virginia can kind of build around there a bit. It reminded me a bit talent-wise, at least of Braxton Key, if not DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter is obviously a stretch number 4 draft pick in 2019, but he's got the talent like those guys. He can guard all 5 positions. He can make jump shots. He can make 3-point shots. He just didn't have a lot of confidence in himself offensively last year from anywhere outside of alley-oop dunks, and follow-up dunks. He was very impressive with those, but I think he'll grow. He'll obviously grow. Shedrick is a curious case. We talked about how he was put in minutes purgatory. He was on his way, in my opinion, to an all-AC season early on. Back in November and December, he was, the first 6 games, I had him averaging close to 12 points a game, shooting 78% from the field. And that wasn't against a light lineup of opponents. That included Baylor and Illinois in the main event classic. It included Michigan in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Then he got demoted as the offense struggled with Reese Beekman's health issues. He has an ankle injury that then turned into an ankle plus hamstring injury. The offense stagnated. Tony Bennett decided, hey, I got to try something new. He went to Ben Vanderplas for several games. That worked well for Virginia. And the word that got back to us was that Shedrick didn't take the demotion well. I can honestly understand. I wouldn't have either. He was playing great. I wrote a column literally the day before the North Carolina game, that went into his statistical, his in-depth statistical dominance. He was averaging at that point just under 10 points a game, still shooting around 70% from the field. But boy, defensive box plus minus, defensive rating, all the inner stats. He was leading the ACC or top 2 or 3 in the ACC in all those important stats. And then he loses his starting job to Ben Vanderplas, and it was one of those things where he didn't take it well. He didn't practice well from what we were told, and he didn't get a lot of minutes. He had 26 minutes in the NC State game, but overall in the next 14 games, 107 total minutes. So, he was relegated to the bench. He was bolted to the bench. Well, you could tell that he was bolted to the bench too, and that there was issues other than just Bennett wanting to play Vanderplas more. Vanderplas had a back injury. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when it was, but you could probably point to when the offense started stagnating again. It was probably around the Virginia Tech game when Vanderplas played 29 minutes and went scoreless. That was like February 4th or so. The next game was the game that the NC State game where Shedrick got 26 minutes off the bench and played well, 10.6 rebounds. But then he went back to the bench. In fact, the last 2 games regular season, Clemson and Louisville, 2 home games, DNP coach's decision, did not play. Coach's decision, healthy scratch was Shedrick, including for senior day. Yes, Shedrick still had 2 years of eligibility left because of the red shirt, but he's graduating in May. So, as it turns out, he didn't get to celebrate senior day with his family, didn't get to play on senior day, despite the fact Virginia, rolled. Tony Bennett actually played the last 42 seconds, I believe it was. He put some walk-ons in the game. Chase Coleman hit a 3, if you recall. Shedrick didn't get in that game, a healthy scratch. He finally got back in the lineup when Vanderplas broke his hand the eve of the ACC tournament, and he played well. Credit to Shedrick. He hadn't played in a while. He averaged 8.7 rebounds, 2.8 blocks a game, including 15 points, 13 boards, 4 blocks in the NCAA tournament game, the loss. Now, you could argue, and it's been pointed out by numerous folks, that he was out of position on that last pass by K.A. Clark. If he's where he needs to be, Virginia keeps playing, but he didn't. He didn't get off the bench in a loss at Virginia Tech. He only got 18 total minutes in the losses at Boston College and at UNC. Those losses were limiting for Virginia. If win one of those 3 games, that Shedrick either got no time or limited time, and Virginia wins the ACC outright instead of the co-regular season champions. And who knows what that does in terms of momentum. I kept writing columns about how Shedrick needed to play. He, just didn't get off the bench. So, let's talk about Isaac Traudt now. Trout's a guy that redshirted this year. Before the season, there was a lingering injury from practice. I think that's right. And this decision was made early in the year. I think it was after the Monmouth game. We were told by Tony Bennett, Monmouth game, second game of the season. But the decision was made before that game. Virginia won that game 89-42. It was the kind of game you knew you were going to probably win by a good bit. Coach Bennett said after the game that, I was going to put a lot of guys in this game. That was a game that Caffaro, who was still then being referred to as Caffaro, had to miss because he was going to play for the Argentina national team in a qualifier in D.C. Ryan Dunn got a lot of minutes, scored 13 points, had 6 boards. That was his sort of breakout game. Traudt decided before the game, hey, I think I need to work more on my strength. I need to work on things a little bit. I want a redshirt this year. Don't want to waste this year, getting a few minutes here and there and kind of waste a whole year of college. So he told Tony Bennett, the decision was out there. What do you think? And I think I'll redshirt this year. So there's a lot of talk from Virginia fans on social media, message boards, that kind of thing, about, well, maybe the decision to redshirt him is why he left. He's the one who decided to redshirt. And Coach Bennett referenced a few times early in the November-December season that they could always revisit that. I would suggest that the fact that Traudt didn't end up playing his way, I guess, into not redshirting would tell you that he hadn't done enough to earn more minutes than the guys ahead of him in the post. Not to say he's obviously, a lot of potential, number 57 recruit in the class of 2022. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Nebraska. He said in his message on social media where he indicated he's going to transfer. He wants to go closer to home in Nebraska. He's from Nebraska. He's been linked to Creighton. There's a possibility of Nebraska, Lincoln, the school in the Big Ten. So, what this does, obviously, it's not just those 2 guys, Shedrick and Traudt, that are being lost. Also, Caffaro, I mentioned, Ben Vanderplas, he was a grad transfer. This was his last year. Jaden Gardner, his last year as well. A couple big losses there with those 2 guys. And so it just leaves Ryan Dunn, as I mentioned, and Blake Buchanan, the 4-star power forward from Idaho that picked UVA over Gonzaga. Obviously, Virginia has some guys, some feelers out to guys in the portal. I won't go into great detail about that, but what you can tell from looking at the profiles of the guys that Virginia has reached out to the stage is that what Tony's looking for are guys more like Ben Vanderplas than like Kadin Shedrick. Guys, think Jay Huff, big guys who can shoot the three, big guys who can stretch the floor for you. And, Virginia's been at its best. I wrote a column about this yesterday after kind of letting it all sink in. Virginia's at its best when it plays small ball. The two best teams in the Tony era, the Elite Eight team in 2016, the National Championship team 2019, started smaller guys at center. It primarily down the stretch of the 2016 season, Anthony Gill at 6'8" was starting at center. And then in 2019, 6'9", Mamadi Diakite was starting at center. And the 2019 team had four guards around him. It was a four-guard lineup. Kie Clark and Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, DeAndre Hunter. I've had people argue with me. DeAndre Hunter was more of a forward. That's great. You can say that. He was a guard. Braxton Key off the bench, a big guard, but still a guard. Could guard, anything from 1 to 5 on the floor, just like Hunter. That's what gave Virginia the lineup flexibility. That doesn't mean that Jack Salt didn't get a lot of starts that season. And then it doesn't mean that, he didn't get a lot of minutes that season, but Virginia was at its best. And in fact, when in the NCAA tournament, the team was at its best when Mamadi Diakite was starting at center. Similar for that 2016 team that should have gotten further than the Elite Eight. We all know that. I still think that was the better team of the two, to be honest. But that team had, it was a little differently constructed. Isaiah Wilkins was definitely a 4 on that team, a defensive 4 though. And then Gill at the 5 spot. They could interchange with each other defensively. Offensively, Gill was the post guy who scored, and Wilkins set screens. But that team, those two teams played small ball, and so spacing the floor well with outside shooting, not clogging things up in the middle, and that's what Tony's looking for. Tony and staff are looking for. With the reach outs to the guys in the transfer portal now who are bigs. And that's, I think that Virginia, I know that there's a lot of wailing and gnashing of the teeth right now. I think that, you look at what Virginia's got coming back, you could have, let's just throw out a 4-guard lineup, Reese Beekman, Dante Harris, 2 point guards. And Dante Harris, a Georgetown transfer who's got a lot of hype from his work with the program. He transferred in at the Christmas break and worked with the team as a redshirt. A lot of love for him that I'm hearing about from the practice, what he did in practice, running the scout team, that kind of thing. So Beekman and Harris, and then Armand Franklin, Isaac McNeely, a 4-guard lineup. Now that they'd be a little smaller. Harris is 6 feet tall. Beekman is 6'3". Franklin 6'4". McNeely 6'4". Then I would have, theoretically a floor spacer at center, to kind of like a Vanderplas, a 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guy who can shoot threes. Have Dunn come off the bench, be my Braxton Key. Blake Buchanan could be put himself in a position to challenge for minutes there as well. And then your backcourt minutes could, your bench minutes could come from Leon Bond, another 4-star who redshirted this year. Elijah Gertrude, a 4-star who, before he got hurt, was ranked higher than anyone Tony Bennett's ever recruited at Virginia. Gertrude, a combo guard, a very good offensive player, who will definitely be a guy on this team that in the future will be a guy who puts the ball in the hole for this team. Not a bad eight-man rotation, if you ask me. And in line with this, if you're thinking about small ball, I did a reader Q&A yesterday where I took some questions from readers about is it time for Tony to pick up the pace a little bit, and I'll thank those readers for making me think to do this. And I did a deep dive, maybe spent too much time on this considering everything else news-wise yesterday. I guess I started writing this story before the news started popping out about the guys leaving. Now, Virginia averaged 5.7 fewer possessions per game than the average Division I team. So it's not as many, you always hear, especially NCAA tournament time, Virginia plays too slow and they keep teams in games. They don't have enough possessions. It's 6 fewer possessions than the other team. So it's not like, when I did the math on their margin per possession this year, Virginia's margin per possession was pretty tight, actually. But still, that would add up to about a point per game for those 6 possessions, a total of a point per game that Virginia loses in average margin of victory because of the slightly, it's a lot slower pace. Virginia ranked 360 this year out of 363 teams, but it's 6 possessions. It's not like Virginia's playing 15 or 20 less possessions per game than the average team. It's 6. Now, that said, okay, let's throw that number out there. Now let's throw out how effective you are at offense. And when you look at the Final Four this year, two of the teams in the Final Four, UConn and Miami, are both in the top 5 nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency. The other, Florida Atlantic's 24th, San Diego State 75th. So Virginia was 72nd this year. And what you hear about when you're around the Virginia program, you're a fan, you're a writer like me, I'm both a fan and a writer, is that Virginia wins with defense. But I mentioned those 2 teams, the 2016 and 2019 teams, the 2 best teams of the Tony era. Both were top 10 in defense, in adjusted defensive efficiency, according to Ken Pom. They were also both top 10 in offense, and they're the only 2 teams he had in the top 10 in offense. So defense, yes, defense a constant, but it was offense that was the difference with those 2 teams and why they got to the Elite 8 and in the Final Four national championship in the case of the 2019 team. Tony's basketball philosophy is built around tempo, not just on the defensive end, on the offensive end as well. On the defensive end, obviously, it's all about they double the high screen and roll to get the ball out of the ball handler's hands. It makes the team take up, the opponent take up more time in getting its offense set. Either you eliminate the pick and roll from your game, or you accept that you're probably going to end up with a late shot clock heave of some sort. If you try 1 or 2 of those and you run out of time, the 30-second shot clock actually helped Virginia. If things were to go to a 24-second shot clock, it would help Virginia defensively even more. So please, let's do that, NCAA. And also when the ball gets in a post, if there's a good post player getting the ball in the post, or even a guard sometimes, if there's a mismatch there, on a smaller Virginia guard, they'll double the post and try to get the ball out of there again. They'll give up a contested 3, a lower percentage shot for those high percentage shots off of either screen and rolls or off a post. Now, offensively also plays into defense. Virginia plays offense kind of like a hockey team, the way I look at it. When the ball's flying in the air, you see that the Virginia guards, the forwards, there's usually one guy crashing the boards and everybody else running back. They're trying to prevent a breakout. And so that prevents offensive rebounds. Offensive rebounds, when you look at Synergy Sports numbers, some of the inside data, one of the better inside data sites, teams score at a higher point per possession ratio on offensive rebounds than just about anything else you can do. Transition and offensive rebounds are the 2 best things you can do. Well, Virginia doesn't like to crash the boards offensively, and they don't like transition. Virginia was actually in the bottom. Let's see. Virginia's, hey, I got to find the numbers here. 355th in the country out of 363 teams in transition possessions per game, 5.6 transition possessions per game. Bottom 10 in the country for Virginia. Now, when they did run, they were great at it. Top 10 in efficiency, top 10 in points per possession, according to Synergy. But those are the easy baskets. When you get out ahead of the defense, don't let the defense set up. You either directly attack the rim, you kick it out to a 3-point shooter, or you wait for the secondary break, kick it back to a trailer who can be a 3-point shooter, or drive to the basket. Those are your most effective baskets. Offensive rebounds, either when you go right back up in the post with it, or if you kick out to a 3-point shooter. Virginia fans are aware when it seems like teams makes the most of their threes against Virginia defensively when there's an offensive rebound kick out to an open shooter. Virginia, by not attacking the offensive boards, doesn't get as many of those opportunities as the average team, and certainly the transition is way below average. So Virginia plays a lot of half-court offense. 92% of Virginia's possessions are half-court possessions, and that's obviously bottom 10 in the country, or top 10 in the country, depending on how you want to look at that. And if Virginia was more efficient in that would be okay. But Virginia ranked 68th in half-court offense, tied with Purdue, ironically, because Purdue also is a team Virginia's 92% of their possessions are half-court possessions, 90.8% for Purdue. They're a team that likes to punch it inside with Edey this year. Punch it inside, let the post do its magic. Ironically, perhaps, maybe coincidentally, maybe not, Purdue also knocked out of the tournament in the first round. I mean, when you play a lot of half-court offense in a one-and-done game, if it bogs down at all, Virginia remembers this too. 2018 UMBC. If your half-court offense bogs down and you're not getting easy buckets in transition offensive rebounds, you can be susceptible. So keep that in mind. And so, and both those teams lost to up-tempo underdog. Fairleigh Dickinson, a team that, full court pressed, forced some turnovers out of Purdue. Furman got down 12, and Purdue, had a brief lead in the second half, but, pretty much Fairleigh Dickinson controlled that game. Virginia controlled the game with Furman until the coach, Bob Ritchie, went to a 1-3-1 zone and took Virginia completely out of its offense. And then that sped up Furman. And, things really turned around in those last 10 minutes. So when you look at what's being rewarded in the here and now, I know this is just a one-year number, but the four teams still playing, I mentioned, the offensive efficiencies thereof. Two of the teams are in the top 50 in terms of transition offense per game, Florida Atlantic and Miami. UConn's number 125, and even San Diego State at number 210 in the country still averages twice as many transition attempts per game as Virginia does. That shows that's how far down the list Virginia is in transition attempts per game. San Diego State is an interesting comparison. That's the program that was compared to Virginia. I mean, they're a solid defensive team. There was a potential 4-5 matchup. Those two teams supposedly, really slow teams. Actually, San Diego State averages 4 more possessions per game than Virginia does, and they push it more. So even in comparison, they're a team that, yes, they value their defense, and they are stout on the defensive end, but they'll push it more. So, the one other factor I looked at was end of shot clock. There's a site, hoopmath.com, hoop-math.com, that now it doesn't give a national leaderboard in this area, so I had to go do some figuring. But what I looked at was Virginia, the number of shot attempts in the last 5 seconds of the shot clock. 19.9% of Virginia's shot attempts this year were in the last 5 seconds of the shot clock. So again, I can't tell you how that ranks nationally, but I did look at I looked at the other teams in the ACC, and I threw Carolina in there too. I was going to say the other teams in the ACC that made the NCAA tournament, then I threw Carolina in. Virginia 19.9% in the last 5 seconds, Duke 15.7%, Miami 14.3%, Pitt 13.4%, UNC 13.0%, NC State 11.6%. And all those schools, well, Carolina, the exception. Carolina actually shoots a lower effective field goal percentage on its end of shot clock shots, probably because it had Caleb Love this year. They won't have that problem next year. But Virginia, 45.3%. Everyone else, Duke was over 50%. Miami was just under 50%. Pitt over 50%. NC State over 50% on their end of shot clock opportunities, and they had less of them. So Virginia, more attempts at the end of shot clock, low percentage on those shots. Less transition buckets, less offensive rebounding. That there's a reason this adds up or doesn't add up for Virginia. They're playing a harder game than everyone else is playing offensively. And how this factors in, another question came in. How does this affect recruiting? Tony obviously has the ability to say, I've got a lot of guys in the NBA. So don't listen to anybody who says you can't play our style of ball and get in the NBA. That's correct. But I wonder about now in this transfer portal era, in this NIL era, how it affects a guy like Isaac Traudt. Now he redshirted of his own volition, but and he's saying he's homesick. Is he homesick because he played a year in that grinding system, even in practice, and then now he's got to look forward to 4 more years of that grind, or and he thinks he's an NBA player, and UVA's bigs. It's hard to be a big and go to the NBA from UVA. There's a lot of guys who are guards from that group that are in the NBA from Virginia. Jay Huff's the one. He's back and forth in the G League and the NBA, and he's a perimeter shooter at 7'1". I'm trying to think. Mami Diakite has turned himself into a 3-point shooter. Anthony Gill was a power forward and center at Virginia. He's turned himself into a 3-point shooter. So it's harder to get to the NBA from UVA if you're a big guy. And also, if if you are a guy that feels like your offense is stifled as a guard, it can be. Now you can transfer out a year. You don't have to. You don't have to sit out that year, and that was a disincentive to transfer out once you committed. I just wonder. I mean, I'm not saying it does. Obviously, Virginia, Tody's recruiting great. All of his guys are 4-star guys. But some of the guys are transferring out, and you just have to wonder how that's going to impact things down the road. So, any case, we'll be looking for more news. Hopefully, there's no more bad news in the sense of just guys leaving. I'm not sure if it's bad news. I mean, we're taking it that way. This is the transfer portal era. The goal for coaches at this stage is, okay, if there's guys leaving, they're leaving because they're looking for better opportunities. And, we kind of want guys who want to be here. Let's go out and find some guys who want to be here. And at least when you're recruiting guys who have a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years of experience under their belt at the college level, you can get a sense of what they're like. When they're coming from high school, they've played some AAU in the summer. You've evaled them there, but it can be it's a bigger leap to go from the high school game and even playing high school age AAU talents, top talents, than it is having played against grown men at the college level, whether that be mid-major, Power 5, whatever it may be. So you get a little bit more. You get a little bit more of a good feel for those guys when you get them in, and we'll keep our eyes on that. Obviously, that news. We'll talk later in the week. Obviously, I'm going to do a Jerry Ratcliffe show podcast that'll come up on Thursday, but we'll do some more this week. Probably talking some football. It's spring practice time at Virginia, and I've been keeping up with the spring practice comings and goings on and development therein. So we'll talk probably tomorrow. Tomorrow being Wednesday, we'll probably talk some UVA football tomorrow. And that means I got to get to work today to get some columns cranked out so I can have something to talk about tomorrow, right? If you have any questions for me, any comments for me, any observations, criticisms, attaboys, whatever the case may be, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment in the YouTube section there, the comment section. If not, you can email me at chris@augustafreepress.com. Look forward to hearing from you. And also, there's a comment section on our website for stories, and it's been really great. I love the fact that we've built up a good commenter base, and we hope to continue to build that as well. So, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, for tuning in, for watching, whatever the case may be, and look forward to talking to you again soon.